Hi, so it's time to learn some more about some inspiring people. So we've got our books, we've got this one, and we've got, this one. So Goodnight stories for rebel girls and stories for boys who dare to be different. So we're going to start with a story. So remember we're calling them stories, but they're the stories of people's real lives. So this story is from the Stories for Boys Who Dare to Be Different. So it's a story about a boy, a man, and this one is about Jamie Oliver, who you might have heard of before. So this is a picture of Jamie Oliver here, and it says, Jamie Oliver. They called him the Naked Chef, not because he didn't wear clothes, but because he thought that food should be stripped down to its most basic form. No fancy sauces, no strange chemicals, just honest, naked food. Jamie started cooking when he was 8 in the kitchen of his parents' pub, the Cricketers. By the time he was 11, he could chop so fast his hands would blur. Ooh! Transforming simple ingredients into delicious dishes and impressing all the adults that worked alongside him. To learn more, he left school at 16 for a technical college where he studied food and nutrition. Afterwards, he got a job at a restaurant called the River Cafe. That was where he was spotted by a TV producer. That's somebody who decides what they're going to make, is part of the decision on what people are going to make for TV shows, who saw a spark in him and offered him his own TV show. Britain fell in love with Jamie. He was funny, charming, and the food he made looked stunning. Jamie's show did well, but he wanted to give something back too, so he opened a restaurant called 15 and trained young people from poor backgrounds to work there, because sometimes if you don't come from a well-off background, it's harder to get started. So he wanted to give these people a head start in life. So instead of charging lots of money to qualify to work in a restaurant, because sometimes to work in a fancy restaurant you have to get lots of expensive training, and Jamie didn't want people to have to go through that. So now there are 15s, so these kinds of restaurants, now there are 15s all over the globe giving young people opportunities they'd never dreamed of having. So he really managed to give something back. Another thing that mattered to Jamie was the food being served in schools. That was very important. Instead of nutritious, healthy food, children were given fatty, greasy foods. Instead of looking after them, schools were making them unwell. In his TV show, Jamie tried to prove that healthy food didn't have to be expensive or boring or mushy. It could be bright and exciting and cheap too. Because of his efforts, schools have changed the type of food they serve, and the children eating it are happier, healthier, and a lot better at concentrating. Because if you eat the right food, your brain is going to work better. Body is going to feel better, you'll be able to concentrate more, you'll feel happier. It makes a huge amount of difference the kind of food that you eat. That's why it's so important to eat healthily. Jamie was lucky enough to find his passion when he was young, and brave enough to use that passion as a way of making the world a better place. And he said, all I ever wanted to do was make food accessible to everyone, so something that everyone could easily get to in a good way, so good food that everyone would be able to get. So the picture is of him doing that super fast chopping of carrots, I think. So that's pretty awesome. It's really nice that not only was he able to be successful himself, but he was able to help other people be successful, which is really what makes somebody a great person. So that's the story of that, him. And now we're going to look in this one. And we are going to learn about Margaret Hamilton. And she was a computer scientist. And I think you're going to recognise some of the words in here. So, once there was a girl who put a man on the moon. Her name was Margaret, and she was really good with computers. When she was just 24 years old, she joined NASA, which is the US's agency that explores outer space. So the United States is agency, so like the big kind of group that recruits people to work on finding out things about space and sending people and probes up into space. All very fascinating and interesting and very hard to work for. She took the job to support her husband and her daughter, little realising that she would soon lead a scientific revolution that would change the world. So like a really big change and big step forward in science, something really amazing. Margaret was an engineer and led the team who programmed the code. Oh, we know a bit about code, don't we? That's what we're learning these days. So she was the engineer and she led the team who programmed the code that allowed Apollo 11 spacecraft to land safely on the moon's surface. So that is an example of something incredible that you can do with code. Margaret would bring her daughter Lauren to work on weekends and evenings. While 4-year-old Lauren slept, her mother programmed away, creating sequences of code to be added to the Apollo's command module computer. Pretty amazing. On July 20th, 1969, just minutes before Apollo 11 touched down on the lunar surface, so the surface of the moon, the computer started spitting out error messages. So that means that there's a problem. The entire mission was in danger. Yikes. Luckily, Margaret had set up the computer to focus on the main task and ignore everything else. So she thought ahead and she'd really well planned this and coded everything. So instead of aborting the mission, that means like stopping it, Apollo 11 landed safely on the moon. Phew! The Apollo landing was hailed by the world as one small step for man, one giant step for mankind, which is very famous. But it wouldn't have happened at all without the brilliant programming skills and cool-headedness of one woman, NASA engineer Margaret Hamilton. There she is. How incredible. So, without her, they would never have landed that spacecraft on the moon, and that was all down to her amazing coding skills. Pretty incredible. So there we go. 2 very inspirational stories today. So I would like you to have a little think about who you think are inspirational people. We learned about 4 different inspirational people last week and 2 different inspirational people this week. And hopefully there are other inspirational people that you have heard about and learnt about and who might be in your lives. So who inspires you? Who do you think is a really great person to look up to? They might be a particular person, like we learnt about particular people there, or they might be like general people who do a job, so you might not know their names, but you might think, wow, people who do that job or that role, they really inspire me. So have a little discussion with your adults or your family. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now, my darlings.